Chapter 2356, Mad Falcon 1. Mad Falcon's shadow erosion ability caused immense trouble for everyone. Even when King Arthur and the others unleashed their powerful psychic energies, that force would be eroded away. Mad Falcon's ability index was at least 50,000 points. For the vast majority of ability users below, it was a devastating blow. Yet Zhang Yi stood as the sole exception. Despite possessing an ability index of 45,000 points, his defensive capabilities surpassed the 50,000 point threshold. You truly are an intriguing specimen. If we could subdue you, I'm certain a demon god would find you most appealing. After speaking, Mad Falcon leapt off the mountain peak. Mid-air, he raised his greatsword. The sky darkened abruptly, faint thunder roared, and dense black clouds swirled into a colossal vortex. Shadows shall shroud all. I sacrifice everything to the Supreme Lord of Wrath. Splash! That ink capable of flattening everything into 2 dimensions poured down like a torrential downpour from the heavens, with an indiscriminate attack on all upon the ground. Eternal Spear, Gungnir. After Odin forged a thunder spear, his left hand instantly transformed into a claw. Devour all, corrode everything, Nidhogg, Serpent of the World. An ultimate spear of dark thunder also materialized in his left hand. He raised both spears high, hurling them toward the Mad Falcon mid-air. Yet the Mad Falcon remained utterly unmoved by such a devastating assault. A vortex of dark droplets formed before him, completely swallowing both bolts of power. The disparity in power was too vast, they weren't even on the same level. Faced with the endless barrage of shadow droplets, Odin had no effective means of defense. A shadow fell overhead as Saladin unfurled a shadow veil, obscuring the sky above the group. "Thank you, Lord Saladin." Odin spoke. Before Saladin could respond, a torrent of dark droplets struck beneath his shadow veil, causing his expression to darken abruptly. His shadow itself was being corroded, pitted with enormous cavities. In terms of ability, he could indeed use his shadow to block 2-dimensional attacks. However, the disparity in ability index caused his shadow veil to be directly neutralized by the energy of the shadow droplets, creating vulnerabilities. At that very moment, a sacred chant rose from within the crowd. Mourning Sister Leibniz closed her eyes, pressed her palms together, and parted her pink lips to begin chanting. The Apocalypse manuscript before her glowed with divine radiance, its pages turning of their own accord. Behind the nun, over a dozen members of the Knights Templar formed a choir, chanting passages from the sacred scriptures. May the Lord shield you with his mighty hand, like a shield protecting the Lamb. May your soul be as firm as Mount Zion, unshaken by the tempest winds of the underworld. May the Father grant the angel's sword to slash through all snares of the evil one, steadying your steps upon the heights. May the grace of the Holy Father, the Holy Son, and the Holy Spirit flow like a river, from this moment unto eternity. The chanting grew louder, drawing upon the faith of countless devout followers of the Eastern Orthodox Church gathered within the Apocalypse. It unfurled a vast golden light barrier, deflecting wave after wave of attacks. Those present each deployed their own methods, struggling mightily against the Mad Falcon's onslaught. Yet the one bearing the brunt of the Mad Falcon's onslaught was Zhang Yi, the one who appeared most serene and detached. Hovering high in the air, everything under heaven shielded him. Above the heavens, within the dark vortex, black ink poured forth in ever-increasing torrents, threatening to transform everything before them into a 2-dimensional stain. Zhang Yi's everything under heaven shield expanded, parrying wave after wave of the ink's assault. Drip. Drip. Splish. Splash. The surface of the dimensional gate rippled with ever-intensifying waves. Yet it remained impossible to breach Zhang Yi's defenses. Sizzle. Within the source furnace of the armor of the End and Demon God armor, a crimson energy gem was forced into place. As the furnace consumed it, potent, scorching energy surged through every part of the armor. A shroud of dark aura swirled over the armor, while the wails of undead souls, accumulated through billions of years of sacrifices in the Wulwan Empire, echoed forth. Zhang Yi raised his finger, swiftly slicing through the air. Dimensional string severance, cut. PSH. Before the Mad Falcon could comprehend what had happened, his body, suspended high in the sky, was violently cleaved in two at the waist. This was Zhang Yi's ability, no warning, no discernible trajectory. Within a 5-kilometer radius around him, he could unleash this attack at any location. Unless one maintained constant vigilance and peak defensive readiness, they could be sliced into fragments at any moment. As Mad Falcon's body was slashed in two, King Arthur and the others witnessed the scene, their pupils abruptly contracting as they instinctively clenched their fists. Chaos. How could he be this powerful? Have we truly fallen so far behind him? Even with his ability index soaring to 42,000 points, King Arthur's heart was filled with a profound sense of helplessness. Did he win? On Emperor Indra's body, the 7 treasure golden steps quietly dimmed a shade. Unbeknownst to others, he had attempted to use his abilities to face off against Mad Falcon once. The result was that he was instantly killed. Yet seeing Zhang Yi eliminate the Mad Falcon, he silently exhaled in relief. The Mad Falcon's eyes held a blank stare as 2 severed halves of his body plummeted from the sky. Zhang Yi intended to catch them with a dimensional gate. After all, this was a powerful origin with an ability index of 50,000 points. But just then, Diaolan bellowed, "Watch out! He's not dead." Zhang Yi's eyes sharpened as the Mad Falcon's body closed in on him. Within his left eye, the second hand of time activated, revealing the next 5 seconds of reality. He saw the Mad Falcon's body plunge into his dimensional space, then instantly explode. It transformed into a sky-filling ink, corroding his dimensional space. With the power of the demon god armor, Zhang Yi's combat strength could rise to a level capable of fighting the Mad Falcon. However, in terms of spatial ability comprehension and pure supernatural power, he ultimately lagged far behind his opponent. In a direct clash of abilities, he was certain to be at a disadvantage. Without a moment's hesitation, Zhang Yi instantly used a space shuffle to create distance between them. Clack! The 2 halves of Mad Falcon's body crashed onto the ground, splattering like a pool of liquid, scattering fragments everywhere. Gurgle! Ink spread rapidly across the ground, forming an eerie bulge from the liquid mass that gradually reassembled into the Mad Falcon's form. Diaolan explained to Zhang Yi, the Mad Falcon's ability is to transform himself into elemental matter. To kill him, you must completely deplete all his energy. Even the Dark Moon Priest back then couldn't kill him, allowing him to escape to this place. Chapter 2357, The Mad Falcon 2. Cold numbers flashed frantically across Zhang Yi's tactical visor, finally settling on a figure that made his gaze grow solemn, 50,000 points. Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes. This was his second confrontation with a Knight-tier enemy. But without the support of his nation's resources, the Mad Falcon, now plunged into a state of mental chaos, clearly exerted far less oppressive pressure than Jinglu had. No, it was because he had grown stronger than before. The resources obtained after conquering the Wulwan Empire had already brought about a fundamental leap in his overall strength. Under Ling's guidance, his mastery of his supernatural abilities had also advanced by leaps and bounds. Now, he could stand toe-to-toe with the Mad Falcon. The Mad Falcon, a monstrosity crawling from the shadow abyss, merely stood there. The shadow ash erosion power emanating from him warped and peeled away the surrounding space, like an oil painting crumpled by an invisible hand. This wasn't mere destruction, but a more complete erasure. Light dimmed around him, sound was swallowed, and even the fundamental particles composing matter lost their dimensionality under that unnatural force, collapsing into utterly flat, lifeless two-dimensional shadows. The ground, the shattered mountains, anything touched by that ink-like shadow instantly lost its substance, becoming a relief imprint on the wall. They retained their former contours, yet were now frozen in eternal silence. Conventional attacks are ineffective. Energy attacks get flattened into 2 dimensions, but they can't be fully absorbed. So excessive energy attacks will still have an effect. Zhang Yi's voice reached Odin, King Arthur, and the others, utterly calm, without a ripple. But we can defeat him. Join forces, deal with the enemy before us first. You help me probe his weaknesses. I'll block his attacks for you. As the strongest among the allied forces, Zhang Yi issued direct orders. Regardless of their inner thoughts, survival demanded cooperation with Zhang Yi. Odin had already suffered a crushing blow, convinced his attacks were feeble. With an ability index of 37,000, he felt unworthy of this battle. Zhang Yi had pulled too far ahead. Yet Zhang Yi was willing to grant him one more chance to strike. After all, every additional force increased their odds of victory. Even if it meant one more cannon fodder. We have no retreat now. We must fight to the end. Benjamin Morgan's voice echoed, accompanied by the rustling sound of paper. In his palm, a thick stack of bills shuffled effortlessly, as if they were playing cards. Paired with his extravagant adornments, a solid gold necklace, gem-encrusted rings, he radiated the impression of a rich and powerful tycoon. This was the president of the Natural Science Association, the capitalist and financier who controlled the nation's economic lifeline. Even his mutated ability was tied to money. Money was his power. The greater his wealth, the more formidable his strength. The Mad Falcon let out a hoarse snort. Raising his hand, his fingertips dripped with shadows as viscous as ink. It is your honor to become part of my art. Honor? Let Odin's spear teach you the judgment of the gods. Odin gritted his teeth. With no retreat possible, he could only fight to the bitter end. Thunder flashed within his single eye. He roared, divine power surging around him as ancient runes ignited upon his armor. He raised high the eternal spear, Gungnir. That legendary spear of unerring accuracy now channeled a devastating shadow godlight. Like lightning ripping through the heavens, it charged forward with unyielding resolve, breaking through the air. Where the spear pointed, space itself was pierced, leaving a scorching vacuum trail in its wake. This was an attack imbued with the power of the rules themselves, locking onto causality, guaranteed to strike its target. Yet, facing this earth-shattering strike, the Mad Falcon merely waved his hand casually. Vast, inky shadows surged forth like living creatures, meeting Gungnir head-on. No miracle occurred, the law seemed overwritten by an even more bizarre order. The moment the shadow-hued spear touched the darkness, its speed plummeted. Its dazzling light and unmatched kinetic energy flattened and dimmed as if pressed into a two-dimensional painting. Finally, the famed Gungnir transformed into a mere shadow-painted image of a spear, stripped of all divine might. It fell lightly to the ground, where Mad Falcon plucked it between two fingers and tossed it aside. Unavoidable? A joke. On my canvas, there are no trajectories, no dimensions, how could anything be unavoidable? The Mad Falcon's tone dripped with scorn. Then, will my attack prove effective against you? King Arthur's expression grew grave. He stepped forward, gripping the hilt of the sword of victory and oath with both hands. A dazzling golden light shot skyward, the radiance of chivalry and planetary will, holy and mighty. He swung his sword, slashing out with a crescent-shaped golden blade aura that ripped through the earth, purifying all impurities as it struck toward Mad Falcon. Excalibur! King Arthur roared, the sword's light shooting skyward, hurtling straight toward Mad Falcon. Radiance? Merely more conspicuous paint. The Mad Falcon neither dodged nor retreated, unleashing shadow embers once more. The golden blade's aura collided with the inky darkness. Its energy, potent enough to vaporize rivers, was absorbed, decomposed, and flattened like a droplet on a sponge. Ultimately, even that resplendent sword aura could not escape being flattened into two dimensions, becoming a mere golden streak embedded within the shadows, beautiful, yet utterly harmless. A heavy aura began to spread. If even an attack of the Black Bishop tier couldn't scratch him, how could this battle possibly continue? Zhang Yi remained unflappable. Everything under heaven stood before the others, now only he could withstand the Mad Falcon's assault. And he still needed to observe. The most crucial factor in defeating a psychic ability user was intelligence. He must find the flaw in Mad Falcon's ability. Otherwise, no matter how many attacks he launched, they would only slightly weaken the opponent's psychic energy without inflicting real damage. Though Odin and King Arthur's assaults had failed, they had bought him time to observe. Mad Falcon raised his massive sword, aiming it at the group, and slashed it down mercilessly. Boom! The black vortex in the sky unleashed a torrent, pouring down viscous space energy with the power to flatten all three-dimensional matter. Zhang Yi spread his palm, pointing it skyward. Suddenly, the dimensional gate transformed into a massive semicircular barrier, blocking every attack descending upon the group. Drip! Drip! Black raindrop-like patterns gradually appeared on the dimensional gate, the result of the Mad Falcon's compressed dimensional energy clashing and dissipating against Zhang Yi's dimensional gate power. Zhang Yi thought to himself, if I were to clash with him purely on the level of supernatural energy, even if I won, it would be a crushing defeat. This place is too dangerous. I can't take risks. I need a more reliable way to win. Chapter 2358, The Mad Falcon 3. As Zhang Yi pondered, a gentle voice sounded beside his ear. Lord Chaos, can you shatter his body once more? Zhang Yi's eyes darted upward, meeting a pair of beautiful, compassionate eyes. It was none other than one of the four horsemen of Apocalypse of the Holy See. The Plague Knight, Leibniz. Zhang Yi didn't even inquire about her intentions, time was too pressing. Everyone present was among humanity's elite, he chose to trust them. Very well. Zhang Yi's gaze sharpened like a sword, fixed intently upon the Mad Falcon above, locked in a battle of spatial forces. His psychic power began calculating the opponent's coordinates. The supernatural abilities within his body began to operate in an unprecedented manner. No longer merely a space shuffle, they delved deeper, touching the fundamental fabric of the world, the dimensional string severance. With a single hand pressed forward, the space ahead shifted abruptly on the fixed dimensional plane, without warning. The invisible dimensional bass strings, under his manipulation, were abruptly torn away without any sign. This wasn't an attack, but deconstruction. He temporarily peeled the Mad Falcon and the surrounding shadow energy away from the current stable three-dimensional spatial structure, scattering them into more fundamental building blocks. The Mad Falcon once again sensed the stability of the space around him collapsing. This force wasn't directly countering his two-dimensional form, it was shaking the very foundation of his existence. The viscous shadow ink froze momentarily, as if deprived of its supporting plane. Pfft! Even with defenses primed, Mad Falcon couldn't comprehend what ability Zhang Yi had unleashed. Without surprise, his body was slashed once more. This time, however, it wasn't a clean horizontal sever, instead, over a dozen instances of dimensional string severance reduced him to fragments. Then, bang, he transformed into a sky-filling ink, splattering across the air. No flesh scattered, no energy exploded. Instead, an utterly bizarre spectacle unfolded. Mad Falcon transformed into a vast, viscous, constantly writhing and expanding pool of pure black ink, splattering through the air. This ink seemed alive, like an abyss freed from its bonds, radiating an ominous aura as it began attempting to coalesce anew. The radiant glow of energy that struck it was utterly devoured, leaving not even a flicker of reflection, only absolute darkness. Did it work? King Arthur gripped the sacred sword tightly, watching the writhing darkness warily. No. We merely disrupted his form. Zhang Yi's voice was icy. His origin remains intact. This thing is reforming. He turned to Leibniz, who stood with hands clasped, preparing to cast a spell. Next move is yours. A low chant, laden with boundless sorrow, rose from the battlefield's edge. It was mourning Sister Leibniz. She had stood motionless as a backdrop, but now slowly raised her head. Crystal-clear tears streamed from her beautiful eyes. Within them lay no hatred or fear, only pity. Anyone could sense a heart-stopping sorrow and deathly stillness emanating from her gaze. She extended her white fingers, pointing toward the spreading ink, and softly uttered the true name of her power, lamentation. An invisible force, imperceptible to the eye yet distinctly sensed by all living beings, began to permeate the air. It was not an energy blast, but rather a rule-based plague, a decaying curse targeting the very essence of existence. The air seemed to carry the scent of grave dust, laden with decay and finality. As this force swept past Zhang Yi and the others, it merely left them with an inexplicable sense of sorrow and dread. But when it touched the ink transformed by the Mad Falcon, a startling change occurred. Sizzle! As if doused in caustic acid, or scorched by a red-hot branding iron on ice. The once seamless ink instantly boiled and churned. Countless tiny bubbles, resembling wailing human faces, surfaced on the ink surface, emitting faint yet shrill whines. Signs of contamination and erosion became starkly visible. The ink's expansion and restructuring slowed abruptly, with some areas growing dim and thin, as if devoid of vitality. Ah! Amidst the ink-filled sky, the Mad Falcon's anguished and furious mental roar echoed. The power of this morning's wail could directly infect even his non-physical, nearly conceptual form of existence. This plague did not harm flesh or destroy energy, instead, it directly accelerated the decay and demise of existence itself. It was one of the nemeses for beings like him, whose survival depended on their unique form. This was the true meaning of the plague, inflicting ultimate agony, a power more terrifying than death itself. The intense pain and origin wound forced the Mad Falcon to abandon his unstable ink form. The pitch-black ink rapidly contracted inward, coalescing as if time itself reversed. In an instant, it reformed into a human shape. But the reappeared Mad Falcon looked paler, his breath noticeably ragged. Beyond the fury in his eyes, a hint of terror now flickered. He glared at Leibniz, damned plague spreader. How dare you? As expected, creatures that can elementalize their bodies fear area of effect attacks most. Then, a sharp gleam flashed in Zhang Yi's eyes. Leibniz's attack had confirmed his hypothesis. While the Mad Falcon's ink form was bizarrely resilient, it wasn't invincible. Instead, it might expose other vulnerabilities. Particularly against rule-based attacks targeting its state of existence, where its resistance was notably weaker. I know how to deal with this creature now. Shatter him once more. Zhang Yi's lips curved upward as he struck first, his fingers slicing through the air like a blade. Dimensional string severance, already in motion. Understood. Odin roared in a low voice, yet his divine power remained colossal. Thunder and storm coalesced in his hands into a massive warhammer, crashing down with a thunderous impact. Excalibur. King Arthur held nothing back either. The golden sword aura flashed once more, this time with a clear target, straight at the Mad Falcon's core. Benjamin Morgan grinned, revealing a mouthful of gold teeth that glinted blindingly. Big cash. He swung both hands forward, unleashing a torrent of golden bills from his palms. They erupted like a machine gun, barraging the Mad Falcon's body. The spiral lance of the Gucheng unleashed thunderous might. Diaolon transformed into a black dragon, gathering surging flames. The searing heat of the inferno roared toward the Mad Falcon's chest. The others joined the fray one after another, with Zhang Yi leading the charge, launching an unrelenting assault on the Mad Falcon. Zhang Yi's attacks weren't merely difficult to evade, they were utterly unavoidable. The Mad Falcon could only brace for the impact. Having grown wiser, the Mad Falcon formed a protective layer of black ink around his body. Yet facing the combined assault of over a dozen bishop-level mutant, he could no longer sustain full-power defense. After all, he was no longer the Dark Moon Empire's great general. Years of spiritual corruption in the Dark Sun Forest had hollowed out his power.